Hi, hello to all you people who somehow found out about the show and watched it in the year 2025, finished it, immediately searched Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency Explained, and found your way here. You and I, we're gonna get along just fine. If you don't know who I am or what I do, I specialize in breaking down what are called mystery box stories. Basically, huge, wide-reaching serialized mystery plots with super deep lore that gets more and more complex until your brain starts to hurt keeping track of all the questions that pile up as you go. If you're looking for answers, I'm the one who can give them to you. And to my longtime subscribers who have heard this spiel before, you should watch this show. It's really good, and you'll like it if you like all the other kinds of shows I talk about here. This video is probably not going to do super well, but that's okay because more people need to know about this show. It's so good, and it's not fair that it basically fell into obscurity after it ended in 2017. Besides having great characters and being so much fun to watch, it's a masterclass example in designing a plot around a complicated supernatural mystery. Which is why I'm going to do a full recap, answer any questions you might have about the plot, and tell you what made that mystery so great. Let me clarify that this video is specifically about the 2016 TV series, not the books or the 2010 miniseries. So yeah, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency was a BBC TV show based on books by Douglas Adams, of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. That alone should tell you what you're in for. Wild genre concepts told with whimsical, absurdist British humor. Although it's worth noting that the books in the show have the same general premise, but the stories are completely different. The idea is that Dirk Gently is a detective who solves cases by relying on the interconnectedness of the universe. He'll find and investigate what seem to be wildly different, unrelated events, and trust that there's a common thread that links everything together. That's what holistic means. Everything is connected.
Have you noticed an acceleration of strangeness in your life as of late? Perhaps a series of intense or extraordinary events which, as of now, seem unconnected, with the exception of each being separately bizarre.
That right there is all I need to get on board. I mean, complicated, mysterious, interweaving plot threads that slowly develop as the story reveals how it all fits together? That's my entire brand. If this show delivers on its promise, it should prove to be one of the most expertly crafted and satisfying mysteries I've talked about on this channel. So, let's get to explaining. Right after I talk about this video's sponsor. Because, yeah, I guess I'm big enough to get sponsors now. This video is sponsored by Aura. Do you get a lot of spam emails and phone calls and wonder how all these random scammers have your information? It's even freakier when these people have your real name, or other information on you that's supposed to be private. Well, if you spend any time online, you've probably given your information to a lot of different sites. Any one of those sites could have a data breach, meaning your information ends up on the internet for anyone to find. The consequences range from a few annoying spam calls to full-on identity theft. Aura monitors your data online, and with its opt-out feature, it tracks down who's keeping your info and sends delete requests on your behalf. The fewer people have your data, the less spam you get. I've been using it for a few weeks now, and I get a fraction of the spam I used to get. Aura also provides protection from identity theft and financial fraud, alerting you the second your info appears somewhere it's not supposed to be. That's what Aura is most known for, but what takes it to the next level is all the other stuff you get when you sign up. It protects you from identity theft, and has the opt-out feature, and also comes with a VPN, and a password manager, and an antivirus, all in the same plan. I had all of these from different providers, and now I'm saving a lot of money and hassle getting all of them from the same subscription. Get a 2-week free trial by going to the link on the screen and in the description, aura.com/BigBlueBackpack, which is enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data has been exposed. That's aura.com/BigBlueBackpack. It's time to recap Season 1, and I think the best way to do that is to organize it by people. So I'll explain every important character or group in the show, roughly in the order they're introduced and what we know about them. Then we can discuss how they all fit together. We'll start, not with Dirk Gently, but with the protagonist of the story, our Watson, Todd Brotzman. Todd is a normal guy with a pretty crummy life. He works as a bellhop, where one day he sees himself talking about a time machine. Minutes later, he goes into a room and stumbles across a gruesome murder scene. Not long after, he runs into Dirk Gently, who's trying to solve this murder case. He explains to Todd how he has a special supernatural ability to kind of stumble into solving mysteries.
What is a holistic detective?
The term holistic refers to my convictions about the fundamental interconnectedness of all things.
The universe sort of points him in the direction he needs to go, and he always somehow comes across the information he needs to figure everything out. So, if Todd, and we the audience, follow him, we'll find out why all this weird stuff is happening. The guy who was murdered was Patrick Spring, a mysterious billionaire. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on with his murder. Like how there were multiple unidentified dead bodies there with him, and how forensics says they were all torn apart by a hammerhead shark. Also, there was this kitten there that Dirk stole that seems important. And maybe weirdest of all, Patrick hired Dirk to solve his own murder before he died. But alongside the murder, it's also Dirk's job to find Patrick's missing daughter, Lydia Spring. Todd finds this Corgi running around and returns it to its owner, this guy, Gordon Rimmer, and he sees Lydia there acting like a dog. It's soon confirmed that Lydia and the dog swapped bodies. And in a flashback, we're shown how Lydia went to visit Gordon Rimmer because she wanted to find out more about whatever shady things her dad was up to, and he ended up kidnapping her. Farrah Black, Patrick Spring's chief of security, is also out looking for Lydia. She soon meets up with Dirk and Todd, and they work together. Also looking for Lydia are these two missing persons detectives, Estevez and Zimmerfield. They don't know much about what's going on, but they do start to notice that the cops around them don't seem to want them to investigate this case. Also lingering around this whole case are two military guys keeping tabs on Dirk. We see that they report to the CIA as part of a covert operation called Project Blackwing, which monitors and tries to control these holistic people. People whom the universe bends around to allow them to do certain things. At one point they were kept locked up, but they escaped. Dirk Gently is a holistic detective who can supernaturally find the solutions to mysteries. But there's also Bart, a holistic assassin, who can supernaturally kill anyone who needs killing and can never be hurt or killed herself. She finds herself traveling with Ken, a tech guy hired by Gordon and his people and who basically becomes her version of Todd. The other holistic Project Blackwing people are the Rowdy 3.
There are 4 of them. I'm wildly aware.
Who have the ability to run around and smash things and beat people up who deserve it. They also have the ability to absorb and feed on strong emotions from people. This puts them into the path of Todd's sister, Amanda. She has a rare condition called Pararibulitis that causes her to hallucinate horrible pain, and they can feed on her and take the pain away. That's pretty much everyone. Once all the pieces are introduced, the story focuses around the conflict between Patrick Spring and this group of people with a body swap machine. In a flashback, we meet the leader of the group, Rainey, and how the person in the body of Gordon Rimmer used to be the rock star Lux de Jour. They mentioned trying to get their hands on a different machine that can produce unlimited energy, made by Patrick Spring's father, Edgar. And they also mentioned some old-timey adventurer named Zackariah Webb. The body swap machine apparently appeared out of nowhere one day and became the centerpiece of their whole cult. Dirk, Todd, and Farrah find out that Edgar Spring built something in the center of town, and they go there and find themselves on a whole treasure hunt Edgar and/or Patrick set up specifically for them to find a bunch of parts to this machine. This is the machine that the cult wants. Pieces start to come together. The kitten was what killed Patrick because it had a shark inside it. Bart thinks she has to kill Dirk, but for the first time, she can't, which means the universe brought her here for a different purpose. The detectives find the cult's hideout and discover a room full of bodies, and Zimmerfield gets killed. A flashback shows Zackariah Webb building a time machine that goes forward and comes back with a note from Dirk. Despite their best efforts, Dirk and Todd get captured by Gordon. Now, Gordon is this story's character who knows all the answers but won't reveal what information they know because of reasons. He's the bad guy, slinking around, keeping secrets, and making plans. But, in my favorite moment of the entire show, Gordon gets in front of Dirk and Todd and reveals that he knows less than we do.
What is going on? Who are you guys? Did Patrick Spring hire you? If not, then what are you? Are you detectives? Then how does the FBI figure into this? Who shot Ned? How did you know that Farrah Black was gonna be in that apartment? I mean, what kind of crazy coincidence is that? Who beat up Ed and Zed? Was it your guys? Other guys? How many different sets of guys are in this situation? How does Patrick Spring be in 2 places at the same time?
Every character converges on the cult's compound as Dirk finally pieces everything together. The body swap machine is actually a time machine. Dirk and Todd break out as fighting starts, activate the machine, and transport to a few days earlier, the day of Patrick Spring's murder. Then, Patrick shows up and murders every cultist in the building. This isn't the Patrick who dies today, though. This is a version of him from the recent past. This is the part where Dirk breaks down and explains pretty much everything.
I can explain everything.
If you remember this scene, you might not need a recap, but I'll do it anyway. So, here's the main story of this season explained. The story of Patrick Spring versus the Body Swappers. Zackariah Webb, Edgar Spring, and Patrick Spring are all the same person, jumping around in time. In the past, Zackariah Webb built a time machine, which didn't always work right and sometimes ripped souls out of bodies. He accidentally sent the machine into the future and got it back with Dirk's note. Worried about what might have happened in the future, he goes there and finds a group of people led by Rainey who found the machine. Webb stays in the future and takes on the name Edgar Spring, turning his time machine into an unlimited energy machine, as one does, and gets rich so he can fight them. But the cult uses the machine to swap bodies, making them way harder to fight. And they want his energy machine. A war rages between the two sides for decades. At some point, Edgar decides it would be tactical to jump forward a little bit and pretend to be his own son, Patrick. He fell in love with a woman and had Lydia, but Lydia's mom is eventually killed in all the fighting. Patrick, enraged, travels to the present in a big old mech suit to ambush the cult and kill them all. During this entire section, there are two Patricks, the past one who just got here, and the present one who dies. Patrick succeeds in killing Rainey, but the cult isn't all dead, and in the meantime, the present-day Lydia, who had been in the dark about all this, went to Gordon Rimmer to find out what was going on. Gordon kidnapped her and switched her into a dog to ransom her for the energy machine. Gordon never liked Rainey, and used the power vacuum from his death to take control and make the hostage swap. Now we're caught up to when the story is taking place. Past Patrick, Dirk, and Todd go to the hostage exchange between Gordon and present Patrick, cause chaos, and Gordon's people accidentally release the kitten shark that kills present Patrick. Who knew all this was going to happen because he saw it as past Patrick, which is why he hired Dirk. Past Patrick returns to where he came from to set all this in motion. Dirk and Todd go back to the present, where they put Lydia back in her body, defeat the cult with the help of all the other characters, and send the machine back to complete the time loop.
Everybody got that?
Whew, that was a lot. I don't blame you if you didn't catch all of it when you watched the show. Or if you still didn't catch all of it from me explaining it. It definitely took me a while to really understand it. But the show does tell you everything you'd want to know. The only reason it's hard to follow is all the time travel stuff. So let me recap a few things in a different order to see if it helps anyone who's still confused about things. Let's go over Patrick Spring's entire life through his personal timeline. 1886. Zackariah Webb invents time travel and sends his machine to the future and back by accident. He jumps to the 60s to find out what happened to it, and fights the cult as Edgar Spring for a few decades. He later jumps forward a little more, and changes his name to Patrick Spring. He falls in love, has Lydia, but in 2001, his wife is murdered, and that rage causes him to jump to 2016 to try and kill them all. This leads to him watching his older self dying. He goes back to 2001 and tries to avoid his fate for a while before realizing it was inevitable. Instead, he spent the end of his life setting up pieces for Dirk Gently to take down the cult and save Lydia. He left all those clues and machine parts, he hired Dirk to solve his own murder, and then went to the hotel hostage exchange knowing he would die there. Got that? Okay. Now, I'll explain the timeline of the time machine. This is easily the most confusing part of the story, I think. This is a machine that travels in time, swaps bodies, and can create unlimited energy, apparently. Its whole timeline is hard to follow because sometimes the same one is in the same period twice or even 3 times, giving the false impression of multiple machines, but there was only ever one. So here's the path it took. Zackariah built it got sent to the 60s, and the cult had it for half a century, only using it to swap bodies. Then in the present, it breaks, Ken fixes it, and Dirk and Todd send the machine back to Zackariah. Zackariah took it to the 60s, and then used it for all the time traveling I already recapped. And then before his death, he disassembled it and left the pieces for Dirk and Todd to find. They found it, put it together, used it to go back a few days, and then come back, and then Estevez shoots it. It's also worth noting that the machine doesn't travel in time by itself. You need an alter. There's one in Webb's mansion, and the cult hired Ken to build a second one. Okay, that's pretty much the whole main story of Season 1. This plotline of Spring versus the cult really ties together and wraps up really nicely. But there are more mysteries and details that are worth taking note of. So, let's talk about the mysteries of Todd Brotzman. Todd has a bunch of secrets about his life and things he's clearly lying about, that are slowly revealed alongside all the wacky supernatural stuff. Here's his backstory as we know it by the end of the season. Todd was a burnout who dropped out of college to goof off playing in his band, Mexican Funeral. But he had no money and didn't want anyone to know he was a loser. So he lied to his parents about developing Pararibulitis, a disease that runs in his family, so that they would send him money. This continued for several years until his parents ran out of money. Todd eventually got sick of his band and sold their equipment, pretending it all got stolen. But everything changed when Amanda actually developed Pararibulitis. Todd then realized that everything he did was wrong, and that he used up all the family money that she now needed. So he dedicated his entire life getting money to pay for her medicine. This is why, at the start of the show, he broke into his landlord's room and stole the rent money he paid the day before. Speaking of which, that's something that bugged me the whole time I was watching. Todd struggles to pay for his rent and Amanda's medicine. But Amanda lives in this really nice house. So first, who's paying for this house? And second, why doesn't Todd just live there with her? Whatever, no big deal. Those are the mysteries of Season 1. Longtime viewers of mine might have caught on that the structure of this video is different than usual. I usually like to recap the entire show and then explain stuff. But that didn't make sense for this show because it's structured differently. The plotlines of Season 1 and 2 are pretty separated. They both have the same main characters, but each one focuses on a completely different mystery plot that gets solved at the end of the season. That's not to say that there are no mystery threads that'll carry over. We've only been given the smallest glimpse at Project Blackwing and all these holistic people. The end of the season has a bunch of cliffhangers. The military sends this doofus to round up Dirk, Bart, and the Rowdy 3. Todd seems to develop Pararibulitis. And when the Rowdy 3 absorbed Amanda's emotions, she had a flash of vision, so she might have psychic powers or something. At this point in watching, it's hard to say how much they're going to get into the backstory and mechanics of holistic powers. The show might be building to some big overall reveal, or it might keep going case by case with Dirk without much thought into the overarching mythos. But given how the first season ended, I'm leaning towards the first one. As Season 2 starts, let's check in with all the major players from last season to see where they landed. Dirk is in Blackwing, along with 3 of the 4 Rowdy 3, and Ken, under the supervision of Blackwing's new leader, Friedkin. Amanda avoided capture, along with the last Rowdy 3 member, Vogel, and they're on the run. Bart got away as well. Todd and Farah are also on the run, trying to track down Blackwing and rescue Dirk. Here's where we meet our first 2 new characters, subjects in Blackwing. Project Moloch, an old guy who has some kind of power, but for now just lays there, and Mona, a shapeshifter who tells Dirk to find the boy, and teleports him out of Blackwing through a watery portal. Dirk teleports right to where Todd and Farah are, in the town of Bergsburg. Now we have our 3 main characters reunited and a new status quo for the season. The 3 of them team up with a couple of way too nice small-town cops, Hobbs and Tina, to investigate a new case. Dirk teleported into the trunk of a car that was in a tree, and that had a woman's dead body in it. With some more digging, they find another body inside a tree trunk. These are Marina and Hector Cardenas, who were an infamous unsolved missing persons case from 50 years ago. So this season's case, solve the murder of the Cardenases, and find the boy, whoever that is. In the meantime, we meet Susie Borton, a downtrodden housewife with a limp and not much going for her. Until she stumbles across this guy with a magic wand, just called the Mage, doing some shady stuff, and finds herself in possession of a magic wand of her own. She pretty much immediately goes mad with power and starts hurting everyone who ever wronged her. Alongside all this, we get a few cold opens in the fantasy world of Wendimoor. This whole place has a real absurdist, silly vibe that suggests it was imagined by a little kid. I mean, there's a guy named Lord Bad Evil. The main plot here is how the local lords, the Dengdamoors, are in a long-standing feud with another family, the Tross, which escalates after Farson Dengdamoor goes missing and his family accuses the Tross of kidnapping. It doesn't take much for us to figure out that they're being played against each other by the Mage, who wants to conquer Wendimoor and beyond. The same Mage that's in the real world now. He takes on Susie as his apprentice to help him out. But Panto Trost and Silas Dengdamoor are in a Romeo and Juliet situation, and they come up with a desperate plan for Panto to go traveling to another world and try to fulfill the ancient prophecy that a man named Dirk Gently, go figure, would come here with the boy and save them all. Panto Trost ends up in the real world, where Dirk can go find him. Bart also shows up. Dirk investigates the abandoned Cardenas house and finds a pocket dimension full of monsters, and the murder weapon that killed Hector Cardenas, a pair of scissors. Which is interesting because that's what everyone uses as a weapon in Wendimoor. On a wall of the house, they also find a child's drawing of Wendimoor, confirming that it was all created by a kid. Presumably, it was the boy who made this. Now they need to find him. This leads them to find Arnold Cardenas, the now grown-up Cardenas' son. He's gotta be the boy, right? Except, it's a little too early in the season for such an easy answer. Arnold is this story's character who knows all the answers but won't reveal what information they know because of reasons. He gives some vague details about what happened to him as a kid, but he's clearly traumatized and has trouble trusting the gang enough to talk about it. And then before he can say much, he has a heart attack. But he's not dead. He goes to the hospital, and later the gang goes to talk to him some more, and then Susie shows up on the Mage's orders and then kills him. Here's what we do get from him though. The Cardenases came across a boat that appeared out of nowhere one day with a baby inside. Then, figures from dreams and things came to life and terrorized people. Eventually, something horrible happened when his parents fought over whether to sell their land to what was the Mage's company. Meanwhile, Amanda and Vogel had been on the run. They get to Bergsburg too, and they're chased by Mr. Priest, a Blackwing special ops type guy. They're eventually cornered, and right when they're about to get captured, a watery portal like the one from before teleports both of them into Wendimoor. While she's there, Amanda meets the person responsible for all these portals, the witch Wakti Wapnazi, who teaches her how to control her Pararibulitis in this world, use her visions, and reach into the real world with portals. She uses one to rescue the Rowdy 3 from Blackwing. It's worth clarifying that Mona had nothing to do with these portals, even if it seemed like she did at first. She was just someone Wakti was able to reach out to. All the water portals, the one used to rescue Dirk, the one in the Murphy bed, the one that brought Amanda and Vogel, were all her. There's also the one in the barn that the Mage uses to go back and forth. It's not clear if he made it himself, or if Wachty made it and he found it, or if he forced her to make it for him. As Mr. Priest and the Mage close in, almost every major character finds their way into Wendimoor. They work to stop the fighting between the Dagnamors and the Tross, unsuccessfully. But Dirk, when finding a mural on the wall showing the Cardenas family with 2 kids, solves the case. Again, he gives a whole rundown, but here's my summary of his summary. The Cardenases move to Bergsburg with their one son, Arnold. But a boat lands in front of them with another baby whom they adopt. This is the boy. But the boy has reality-warping dream powers that cause more and more problems for the family. The boy also dreamed up the entire fantasy world of Wendimoor. Like all his other visions, Wendimoor started bleeding into the real world, and the fairy tale villain, the Mage, found a way to cross back and forth. All this culminates in his mom selling their farm to the Mage, and in the argument with her husband, she ends up killing him with a pair of scissors. The boy sees this and freaks out, flinging his mom's car into a tree as she drives away, and then going into a dream coma. Arnold called the government about what happened, and Project Blackwing came to take him away. In the present day, the boy is Project Moloch. Right before the season started, Moloch had a stroke that weakened the barriers between worlds, which is why all this is happening now. The stroke broke Wendimoor, which is why this child's fantasyland is full of Game of Thrones-esque violence. With the help of Amanda making a portal, Dirk teleports into the Blackwing facility, rescues Moloch, and brings him into Wendimoor to undo all the bad things that happened there. They also defeat Susie Borden, and Farah and the cops kill the Mage, and everything works out. This Season 2 case wraps up very elegantly. There's no time travel, so it's a little easier to wrap your head around at the end. Easy to mark as solved and put away. But as for the larger mythology, how the holistic people work, we do get some little hints as to what their whole deal is. We're told explicitly that they exist to fix things that are broken with the universe. During the final battle, Amanda and Todd slip into what Amanda calls the backstage of reality, to show that there really is some kind of animating force controlling the universe. Whatever or whomever is pulling all the strings created holistic people as tools to patch up any holes in reality. By the way, everything that happens with Amanda implies that she has these visions because she's a holistic person, even if it's never confirmed. This is also confirmation, not that we ever really needed it, that the government and Blackwing is wrong for trying to lock up and control all of them.
I'll be damned if I'm letting the debug function of reality walk out on my watch!
During the season, Ken is able to manipulate Freakin into letting him run Blackwing, and by the end, he took control for himself, with the end of the season setting up as the main villain going forward. Whatever this is building towards, it sure looks pretty awesome. I can't wait to see how this plays out, and how the secrets of the universe in the show will finally be revealed. I say, knowing full well what's coming next.
I'm fine! Totally fine!
Yeah, Dirk gently follows in the long tradition of serialized mystery shows that build intrigue and lay the groundwork to explore all these complex questions, only to get cancelled. That said, it could have been a lot worse. The way the show is structured helps salvage the overall story. Because each season had its own mystery that was set up and then solved, the most important parts of the story got resolution. The Season 1 mystery, solved. The Season 2 mystery, solved. Only the overarching story with Blackwing and holistic people got cut short. And even with that, we got some decent answers in the Season 2 finale. This isn't an 1899 situation, where the cancellation retroactively makes watching the entire show pointless. You can watch the incomplete show and still enjoy it. I just wish there was more. Alright, that's the entire plot of both seasons explained to the best of my ability. The mystery is solved. But I haven't really gotten to talk about why the mystery is so good. If you're the kind of person who loves trying to piece together a story like a puzzle, here's how this story scratches that itch. This, and all the other shows I cover on this channel, they're a very specific kind of show. A mystery box show. These shows will introduce a bunch of weird and specific supernatural concepts with minimal explanation. It starts off feeling random, but because it's presented as a mystery, there has to be a reason why everything matters. The show implicitly promises that if you keep watching, everything will make sense by the end. A lot of the time, this promise is broken. Audiences go in expecting all these disparate plot points to tie together into a grand narrative with a satisfying explanation, but the creators of the show don't always see it the same way. They treat the mysteries as something fun to get the story going, not as setups that need paying off. Dirk gently doesn't fall into this trap. It understands that everything needs tying together. But what really makes this show special is that it bakes that mystery structure into the narrative. Dirk's powers work in the same way that being an audience for a mystery box show does. He wanders through a supernatural mystery, taking note of everything he sees, and trusting that the universe, the show, will tie it all together eventually. His attitude is what gets the more skeptical audience members, the Todd Brotsmans of the world, to understand that the show isn't just throwing around random stuff. It all matters. It's all going to connect. And by the end of each season, it does. To finish up, I'm going to go over my 10 criteria for what makes a mystery box show work. If you're new here, these are the 10 things that a story should do if it wants to use an elaborate mystery as a story engine and avoid the mistakes of similar shows that came before it. First, the show opens with a big mystery, with Todd stumbling across a freaky murder and seeing himself time traveling. And as he meets Dirk, they investigate and find more and more weird and impossible things which seem random, but they all gradually become connected. And like any good mystery, the audience is encouraged to be curious, keep track of details, and wonder how they all fit together. Because it was cancelled, the show isn't as long as I would have wanted. 2 seasons is just too short to fully explore everything they set up. In terms of structure and pacing, this show did something different than I usually see, and I really appreciated it. Instead of one major mystery going through the entire show, each season mostly had one self-contained single case. At the end of each season, all that stuff is solved and squared away, but there still is an overarching mystery in the background. Like I just talked about, all the mysteries are being solved in-universe. The one thing that does continue from season to season is the stuff about holistic people, their powers, and Blackwing. If the show had been allowed to continue, I would have loved to see how that developed. Unfortunately, because this plotline never got to finish, I wouldn't say that the show wraps up enough to be fully satisfying. However, this show does one of the best jobs I've ever seen in terms of planning and setting up their mysteries in advance. Everything ties together in a way that can only happen if the writers figured out all the details ahead of time. And of course, the characters care about solving the mysteries. Dirk is a detective. He's solving the case just like we are. If it weren't cancelled, this would have been a contender for Best Mystery Box Show. It understands more than any other show what I and people like me want in a story like this. The excitement of keeping track of all these details and wondering how it's all going to come together in the end into one satisfying conclusion. It's so good, and I want to do my part to get it the credit that it deserves. Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency gets a final mystery box rating of 8 out of 10.
Solve